Hello everyone, and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia Lost can be found. This video is going to contain a free-to-play welfare clear of Morsayati Reckoning solo. For this clear, I'll be using permanent welfare adventures only draconic essence dragons with no dragon augments, no limited time Wyrmprints, and free shared skills only. I was inspired to make this clear in part because just a week from today, our next wave of endgame content is going to make its debut, Rise of the Sinister Dominion, and so I wanted to make it clear that even these exceptionally difficult quests, like Morsayati Reckoning, Legend Kaiyan, and Legend Volk, are doable from a free-to-play standpoint, and you may have the adventurers you need to clear this content, as well as the dragons, and not even realize it. Of course, with Draconic Essence Dragons, you do have to summon to get those, but you can unbind them for free, so I still think of this as a pretty cool clear. Let's start off by taking a look at the team that I used, and then we'll go into battle. So my team for this consisted of Audric, Ronzel, Aoi, and Cleo, and to walk through all the setups on them, here are my Wyrmprints for Audric. Audric was using Shinobi as the dragon, and I'm using an 8 unbound Agito weapon. Remember, you can get 8 unbinds in your Agito weapon just by playing Master difficulty content, which is easier than Legend or Exceptional content. Ronzel also has 8 unbinds, and he's using Vayu, recently added to the Draconic Essences. You can see his Wyrmprint setup there. Was able to also do this with a Pazuzu, but with Audric was not able to swap out the Shinobi. Here I have Aoi in my 3rd slot on my team, and as you can see from my Wyrmprints, I'm relying upon both Burning Punisher and Poison Punisher. Have Konohanasaki as the dragon, and again, an 8 unbound Agito weapon, farmable in Master, which is an easier level of content than this level. And finally, Cleo, who's actually really nice on this team here, using Nidhogg, an 8 unbound Agito weapon, and more of a support setup as far as her Wyrmprints go, but with Shapeshift prep to add on to Audric's power a little bit. Cleo also has Dragon's Claws as her Chainco ability, which definitely comes in handy in this setup. And finally, my shared skill is Blazing Circlet, which of course comes from Yuden, but Yuden is mana spiraled, so I do get some extra dragon gauge from that particular shared skill. Alright, so let's get into the battle. Basically, this team comp is based around Audric shapeshifting, and he's kind of like a budget Mim for us here. If you're using Gala Mim, or if you have her, she is excellent for this fight in both solo and co-op. You get a lot of shapeshifting in, she does a lot of damage. But if you don't have her, Audric is a pretty good character to ramp up shapeshifting with as well. So his first skill, Exaltation Terminus, gives you some extra dragon gauge, and with the Agito weapon skill, he can attack at an increased rate. His second skill causes poison, so that's also pretty good for my Punisher setup. And basically I've tried out this type of setup a couple different ways. So I tried it at first with Althemia instead of Aoi. Althemia actually seemed to survive a little bit better as an AI, but the problem is you have too many poison enablers on the team, so you overcap poison, and that's not good. And so that's why I ended up switching to Aoi. It also allowed me to bring in another form of Punisher more reliably. You could also go with Frostbite Punisher here if you have a shared skill that causes Frostbite. That would also work pretty well. But unfortunately, Aoi's not the best AI, I would say. She's still good here in this context. She does give the Strength Co ability and provide some burn support, so I ended up liking her as one of the better free-to-play options, but if you have other adventures, she's certainly probably the most replaceable on the team. Ronzel actually puts in a lot of work in this particular fight because of his life shields. That is clutch against some of the afflictions that Morsayati does. It helps a lot in Phase 2 as well. Ronzel also causes poison. He's just a really solid staple adventurer. The defense co-ability matters a little bit, I guess, for some tight spots as far as survival, but tends to not matter that much. And his chain co-ability works across elements, so it's a little bit of extra strength, but also doesn't really matter a whole lot. Essentially, all I'm doing here is spamming skills, and also kind of knowing the cadence of the moves that Morsayati's going to do. Sometimes when it lines up well, using the skills to also iframe to give a little bit of extra protection to my AI and make it so I don't have to roll around as much. I am sort of focused on the tail here, and if you can focus on one of the parts, that's going to help you. If you can demolish it when you're not a dragon, that's going to give you some extra dragon gauge for yet more shapeshifts. I tried this again with Chthonius on Audric instead of Shinobi, and it was not enough damage to clear in time. In this type of budget setup, that's basically what I'm competing against, is the clock. dying is actually not as much of an issue as you might think, but running out of time certainly is. There are some lethal moves, especially in Phase 2, but most of them can be avoided with practice. Alright, so we're getting close to the point that we want to see Morsayati warp to the center of the arena. It takes a while to pile in the damage here with our more budget setup, but you do get there eventually. Want to be careful of not accidentally getting hit and afflicted with your Odric. That is going to be one of the more debilitating things that can happen in this first phase. You can accidentally get hit with Frostbite, Curse, or Bog. It's going to make it so you can't shapeshift, and with Curse in particular, it's a loss of DPS because you can't use your skills, which is really bad when you're using Shinobi. So you just want to play a little bit careful here, but continuously attack as much as possible. And what I like to do is try save the shapeshifts going into Phase 2, making sure you're not a dragon when Ruination starts. If you're already a dragon when that starts, you're not going to get extra dragon gauge for a free dragon. So that is one thing to keep in mind. You can attack this orb relatively easily to force the transformation. And we're in the high 4-minute mark if you look at the top right on the clock. That is usually a pretty good sign that you're going to be able to clear in time, but it's going to be tight with this type of lower power team. It's funny because these skill damage dragons used to be very premium in Dragalia and are among some of the best dragons, so now that they're available in the Draconic Essences, like, I say this is a low power team because they're available to combine for free, but they're frankly pretty good dragons. They're very solid, and there are definitely some non-essence eligible dragons that are going to be worse for you than these options. Like, some of those have been featured recently even, such as Giovanni. Unfortunately, they're just not that great. So now we're in Phase 2. Decided to get that little dragon obelisk there for an extra light beam attack. Also was going to be rolling around anyway to dodge for a while, so that's kind of why I decided to roll over there. And the first part of Phase 2 is pretty dangerous. You do want to be kind of shields up with using your iframes. If you can demolish a part to avoid the dashes, that really helps to keep the boss in place, to keep Morsayati in place. In higher DPS comps, you can really stagger the boss repeatedly with Veronica, Gala Mim, Delphi, by steadily breaking the boss, and you can see just how sad this is at times, me just getting stuck in that orb. Finally decided to shapeshift as it carried me halfway across the map. So certainly plenty of mistakes were made. There's some imperfections here. Obviously that got kind of close for Ronzel there, but he does have a nice last defense he was able to trigger off of that. But this was imperfect and was still able to get the job done. So I think that if you're able to substitute out a few of these characters or dragons for slightly stronger ones, you'll probably be in pretty good shape to get this done. In this particular comp, I think that Cleo is actually going to be better than a Grace. So even if you have a Grace, I don't know if I would bring her on here because of how beneficial Cleo is with Odric in particular. And likewise with Gala Mim, Cleo is a really good staple. If you're interested in a more high-end fast comp, I'll post a link in the description below to a Dragalia Lab video. But to point something out here, this was a mistake that could have cost me the run. That attack that hones in on you with those shadow beams from above, that will KO you if you don't have life shields. Like, it will very easily KO you if you don't roll out of it. And if you fall asleep or get stunned and it spawns on you, you definitely want to swap characters because your AI takes less damage than your controlled character. So by swapping out of Odric a few seconds ago, I was able to save him. Rather than him dying to that attack, since he was on AI, he took reduced damage and was able to survive, then I was able to swap back to him. That is one thing to be mindful of. Otherwise, I'm not really swapping a lot in this fight. If I get caged or fall asleep or get stunned or something, I will go ahead and go for the swap. Now we're close to breaking the hands, and hopefully our dragon will end so we can break them here and actually get additional dragon gauge. That would be ideal. One thing also nice about this comp with Ronzel and Cleo is both of them can dispel. That does come in handy against Phase 2 with some of these buffs that go onto the boss. So getting to dispel some of those defensive buffs is also going to help you out a little bit here. And now we've demolished another hand. And we were a dragon though, so we don't get extra gauge. Kind of moved out of the way there on that purple homing attack that can be so dangerous and deadly if you let it hit you. And we have a couple skills charged, so I'm going to use some of them for iframing here to just make things a little bit safer and easier on us. The amount of red AoEs that go up can be pretty obnoxious here, so if you're not used to dodge rolling and using skills to iframe, this does take quite a bit of practice. That's one of my biggest lessons from trying to do this with a slightly more budget team, is just practice makes perfect on this one, especially with just how many attacks the boss does. The great thing about Morsayati compared to Legend Kai and Legend Volk though is so few of the attacks are purple. They're all relatively well telegraphed even if you don't have a lot of time to react. When it came to the exceptionally difficult quests, I definitely found this to be the easiest of the three to pull off with a more budget team. And that's why I used Dragon Augments in my Legend Volk free-to-play solo clear, because I consider that to be harder than this, so you should be able to clear this, get those Dragon Augments before you're trying to clear Legend Volk, if you're using a strictly free-to-play team. If you're throwing in better characters, etc., better weapons and facilities than what I'm using, then you may be able to get more ambitious. But as you can see, we're able to get the clear, and regardless of how much time you have left here, unless you somehow die in this final phase, what I'll call phase 3, unless you die somehow in this phase, you have basically won at this point. The fight will continue on in overtime. You just have to break these different purple pillars and get the dragon obelisks within, and it doesn't matter really how long it takes you. You'll get it done, and as long as you get it done, you should be good to go. Now obviously you don't want to risk it and get a lot of hits here. Wouldn't want to let somebody die here if you're going for your first deathless or something like that. But as you can see, at that point, we're able to summon our Divine Sword from above, and that is pretty much it for Morsayati Reckoning. So if you are stuck on some of this Legend content, I hope this video gives you a little bit of inspiration. Definitely had a lot of fun putting this one together. Certainly feel free to experiment, change out some characters, try out new things depending on which adventures you have. This was just the first comp that I found worked pretty well for me. That is going to do it for today, everyone. Let me know how Morsayati Reckoning has been going for you in the comments below. Otherwise, thank you as always for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.